veteran from Clainsboro, Illinois, currently residing in Cape May, New Jersey, where my wife is serving as a hospital foreman in charge of the dental department at the U.S. Coast Guard boot camp. I want to start tonight by thanking APAC for having me. I want to thank all of you for being in attendance, but more importantly, I want to thank my Aunt Barbara and my Uncle Denny for being here from San Antonio to support me. You see, my uncle has been an inspiration my entire life. He was a role model to me while he served in the United States Air Force, obtaining the rank of colonel, and again as a civilian, obtaining the rank of SES, the civilian equivalent of a general or an admiral, again serving in the Department of Air Force. When I was in boot camp, there were times that I wanted to give up and I wanted to quit. But it was a letter that he wrote to me that gave me the strength I needed to overcome the obstacles I was facing, and I still look to that letter today. My job while I was deployed in combat was to guard some of the most dangerous terrorists our world has ever known. I was tasked with guarding men who had murdered journalists, men who had sacrificed innocent children to spare the lives of their own. Many of these men were the masterminds behind 9/11, planners of bombings all over the world, and some of these men had led terror attacks on U.S. service members abroad. Some of these men were put to death by their own countries, while others have gone on to found organizations like ISIS. One thing is for certain, they share one thing in common: they have never left my mind. By the time I came home from my combat service, I had already lost 15 of my fellow shipmates to suicide. And regrettably, in 2011, I attempted to take my own life after fighting the demons of war and the hardships of reintegration. It was the help of many supporters like my family, that I was able to overcome this and turn my pain into something positive by starting my own lobbying firm, where I could focus on advocating for fellow veterans for the rest of my life. Ironically, it was in college that I was doing research on the effects of military service and the issues of suicide that I first discovered Israel as a starting point for my own recovery. It was my research that taught me that Israel has one of the lowest suicide rates among its veterans, and the reason is because they implement mental health treatment from the entry level of service and embed mental health professionals throughout every angle of the military. After using this research to make changes in the Department of the Navy, I then moved my focus to changing our issues facing the veterans and military personnel. As a result, I have been honored to advise presidents, every member of Congress since 2014, and just recently last week, the United States Supreme Court on matters related to veteran affairs and military service. Recently, as part of AIPAC's efforts to engage politically connected veterans in the Washington, D.C. area, I was honored to be selected by AIEF to go on a veterans educational mission to Israel, bringing my research from college and life to a full circle. Ever since I was young, I remember learning about the Holocaust. But it wasn't something I was ever truly able to conceptualize until I visited Yad Vashem. To me, it was just a horrific event that had happened, but after entering the Children's Memorial at Yad Vashem, I was able to see that event in my mind in a way that I thought was never possible. You see, when you walk into the Children's Memorial, there's a statue to honor Uziel Spiegel, a small child who was murdered in Auschwitz. He has his finger over his lips to tell you to be quiet. In the military, that's almost like saying there's danger ahead. As you enter, all lights divested from the room. I found myself standing in total darkness, a scene that I knew very well. I came across a single candlelight. There were mirrors all around it. Mirrors that made the candle look like millions of lights. You soon hear the names of the children who were murdered during the Holocaust. As you look around the room, you Dina Breslin, Isaac Meher Brenner were murdered in the death camps of Chelmno in August of 1942. They were 2 years old and 9 months old. Ladies and gentlemen, my own children are 2 years old and 9 months old. For the first time in my life, I began to conceptualize what it would be like as I walked out towards bronze statues of children. I no longer see victims. I saw my own children in their eyes. I heard my children's voices playing. I remember the sounds of war that I had experienced. I remember the pictures of the Nazis in the Museum of Yad Vashem. And I realized I had seen those same images in the eyes of the detainees that I had guarded in Iraq and Afghanistan. For the first time in my life, I felt like I understood. I understood the pain and the fear for my children as I worry about the war on terrorism every waking minute of every single day. Every day, as we traveled around Israel, we interacted with citizens and leaders of the military and government. We soon went to Kibbutz Kfar Aza, which is on the border of the Gaza Strip. As we toured around, I saw pain in the eyes of both mother and child. I heard fear in their voices. I watched the reluctance of children who wanted to play but were scared and fearful at the same time of an attack coming across their border. An attack that happened just 10 days prior to our arrival. I remember talking to my wife before I left for Israel. She just dropped her children off at daycare. I thought how great it was. Our children were safe while my wife was serving in the Coast Guard. I was traveling abroad to Israel. But those thoughts changed when I arrived at the kibbutz, and I saw the daycare for the small children and babies. There were concrete walls everywhere, and the windows were made of bulletproof glass. I remember looking at white splotches on the wall and asking, what was this? I was informed those were mortar. Those were plaster where the mortars had attacked from the Gaza Strip. This was not a building where military members were working and planning. This was a building where children were sleeping just mere inches on the other side of the wall. A building where my children would be sleeping. These are the same mortars that were flying into the bases that I experienced in Iraq and Afghanistan. The same mortars that left me with a brain injury and a lifelong struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder. Mortars that are used in war were being fired upon innocent people living in the kibbutz, from Hamas surgeons living in the Gaza Strip, for no other reason than this was a Jewish community trying to survive in Israel. So often that is the normal for them. Just like watching the Astros play is the normal for us. Every home that we visited and drove by had to be protected with a safe room. A safe room provided by the government of Israel. A safe room should be there for when an attack happens. But these safe rooms were where their children were sleeping because they feared they wouldn't have time to get to safety. No one in the world should live like that. When you're asleep, when you're awake, or while you're watching your children play. We saw a lot while I was in Israel. Andrew and his team, they put together a great program. We visited the areas outside the Gaza Strip, the borders of Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. It was an honor to meet with IDF veterans, to experience their veteran affairs and to understand the programs that they're putting in place. Because of everything I have experienced on this trip, because of my children, and because I believe that nobody should live in the fear of warlike attacks, I have decided to become a member of the Washington Club today. And I want to challenge each of you to do the same. I made this decision tonight because AIPAC needs my help. It needs your help. Your support of AIPAC will allow more veterans to travel to Israel to see what I saw, to experience what I experienced, and to come home better, stronger, and more engaged. Your support of AIPAC will help ensure that every candidate of Congress is educated about the threats that face the U.S. and her ally every single day. Your support allows AIPAC to invite every single member of Congress to experience Israel firsthand, just like I did. Take it from me. That is the only way they will truly understand what their vote on Capitol Hill is all about. If you're a club member, I thank you. But ask yourself if you can do a little more this year. For the safety and security of not only Israel, but the United States as well. I want to thank AIPAC for having me tonight. I want to thank all of you for being here. And if you're a veteran in the room, I want to thank you for your service and I want to welcome you home. To my family, I hope I've made you proud. And to everybody, thank you. God bless the United States and Israel. Thank you.